Well, it's been actually a little bit longer scale. I would say back more like 10 years ago, we would have seen numbers about double or triple of what we see now. So we imagine it's tied to the chum escapement, to the salmon escapement, and chain, tied to changes in weather system. Well, just how the climate's moving throughout the year. The overall trends for maximums seen and for the overall averages, those have dropped a bit. Like the first site we went to is usually a really an area we see a lot of juveniles, and it's crazy when there's nothing there, and perhaps it's because it's further downstream, and now that the salmon are gone, the eagles are slowly moving back out closer to the Skagit. Sometimes it'll come in October, and sometimes it'll come in December. And if you get those early floodings right when the key spawning season is, then that's also going to impact the eagle counts that you're going to get. If you don't have those until December, then you're maybe going to see higher numbers. But as soon as that flooding event comes down and washes out some of those carcasses, then you're not going to be able to see those eagles, as high prevalence there. It doesn't seem like there's a big pattern on when these flood events happen, and so those are going to really impact on where the salmon are and the carcasses are, and how the eagles are behaving.
I'm a biologist with the U.S. Geological Survey, but I actually did this project while I was on a detail with the National Park Service. And what we ended up seeing was that we saw initially an increase. So starting in about the 80s, we saw an increase up until the 2000s when the number started to decline. We were interested in how many eagles were sort of in the upstream section of the river versus how many were in the downstream section. So our analysis didn't look very specifically at, exactly where were the eagles seen. It was more a question of overall, do we see more eagles here, upstream or downstream? And then we wanted to know, do we see more or fewer eagles over time? So observations were taken every week, essentially in the winter season. So they started in about November and went through, let's say, February. And that's because that's a time of year where bald eagle presence is really dominant in the Skagit. There's very high density of bald eagles that overwinter in that part of Washington, which makes it a really cool place to study. We actually are building on a large body of previous research that has shown that climate change is resulting in changes in the timing of important biological events. The timing of migration and the timing of bald eagle arrival is getting earlier. And we did. We saw that it was getting earlier by about half a day a year. So it gave us pretty reasonable confidence that the trends we were observing were consistent with a lot of other research that's been done on climate change. There is a lot of variability, though. So we know that kind of on average, we're seeing a lot of this type of trend. That doesn't mean we can say that, this species is definitely going to experience earlier phenology as a result of climate change, because species respond in a lot of different kind of complicated ways. And it can really depend on how sensitive they are to temperature, what other cues they use to time their migration or their reproductive behavior, for example. And some of those cues are not affected by climate change. So like the length of the day, for example, that's something that's really important for helping migratory birds figure out when they're going to start their migration. And obviously that's not changing because of climate change. So it's a complicated process, but we can also say it's a common response as well.
My name's John Bauer. I'm a professor at Fairhaven College of Interdisciplinary Studies at Western, and I'm a card-carrying ornithologist. So that's a active area of research right now, is how are migratory birds changing their migratory paths with climate change, and it's clear that species are indeed changing their migratory paths. Eagles, I've studied to some extent the eagles on the Nooksack River, which to us seems a long ways from the Skagit River, but for an eagle, it's just a pretty quick flight over the mountains and you're in the Skagit. So, so there's nothing at all unusual, and eagles are opportunists. In some ways, they're really like, glorified seagulls. They're opportunists, and so they're going to go where the food is. So there's nothing unusual about that.